good morning. I know it's been a lot of good mornings for the past how many episodes now? And that's just because I've been recording in the mornings these days. It's just those are the times that's been working for me. So, you guys, you remember that I said I'm really excited about last episode. I mentioned I was really excited, or yeah, yes, I was excited for the next book we're going to be treating today. And before we go into that, I think sometime this week or last week, I saw something about creators trying to maybe a trend. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's really trending or if it's a trending trend, but that they're trying to, while talking, trying to avoid using filler words. And I realized I use them a whole lot, a whole lot. And that's a really should I say what word did I use? That's a great thing to actually try to work on. And I said I'm going to incorporate it into our episodes from now on, at least for the next one that I might forget. So if you don't know what filler words are like words when you use, um, those kind of things. Those are filler words. You get the overall, you get the picture, but I'm trying. I'm going to incorporate it, especially in today's episode. I'm going to try to incorporate it. It's going to be a bit hard because I realize I use them a lot, and mainly it comes from being nervous and wanting to be properly articulated, but while oh my goodness, I used it again. But while trying to get better at articulation is one of the things one has to get rid of is using of filler words. So you guys fighting today. We're gonna try not to use filler words or use them as little as possible, as to the barest minimum. Then we will. Oh my goodness! It's gonna be a struggle today. It's really gonna be a struggle. But we can do this. More like I can do this. So you guys, let's let's go ahead. But yes, drum rolls. I want to try and give a feeling of suspense, but it seems like I'm not really good at it and I'm quite failing. But today's book that we are reviewing today, I love it so much. It really is so beautiful. I don't even know. I feel like I say that all the time with almost all the books that I read. And that's really good because I know I read good books. I read good, really good books. I go out of my way to hunt them down. And if it's not good enough, I won't come here to talk about it. If I don't find it good enough, I will not come and talk about it here. I've read some mediocre or not up to par books, and they probably just help to kill time, but not enough to want to review them or talk about them. But you see, this one, it's a really good book. I found it very, very intellectual. One thing about me is I love books that spoil my mind. I love books that spoil my mind. Books spoil. I love them because I love books that just helps me think. That gives me headache in a way, because when I find myself really thinking, when I love escapism more. I love escapism in a book, but at the same time, I do not want to read a book where while I'm reading it, I'm feeling my IQ reducing or my intellect just seeping out of me. I love books that while I'm reading it, while I'm escaping, while I'm enjoying it, I'm also learning at the same time. That's the joy of reading for me. Some people really do not share that sentiment. They don't mind. They just want to, get lost in that. And that's really fine too. But I love intellectual books, especially written and woven into fiction in a way that just blows your mind. So yes, before I just keep just going rambling on and on, today's book is Babel by Rebecca F. Kuang, or R.F. Kuang. Most people call her that, but that's what we are treating today, Babel by R.F. Kuang. Ah, God, you guys. The funny part is that one thing about it is, as much as I loved this book, I didn't read it in a go. I really didn't. I think it took me over the space of a week because I kept dropping it at some point. That is the thing about hard books or books that come off as intellectual, because sometimes I would just need a time, a minute or two, or some moment to just process some things I've read, or it's just gotten to me so much that maybe I'm having so much migraine and I just need a little time and space from it, then I'll go back. But I enjoyed it nonetheless. I really loved it. So today we are talking about Babel by R.F. Kuang or Rebecca F. Kuang. Well, I think people really mostly call her R.F. Kuang. I've been debating, is it Babel? Is it Babel? I don't know. So there's probability I'll be interchanging them, but and I read that I saw an interview where the author herself was like she really is not so concerned about the pronunciations, that you could call it Babel, you could call it Babel, whatever it is that works for you. So there's a probability we'll be interchanging. And you guys, and let me apologize. Oh, another filler word. But let me apologize that there's a probability it might go long, but I'm going to try as much as possible not to let it get too long. I just have so much to talk about. There's just so much. I feel like even with that so much that I want to talk about, I still cannot cover a plethora of things in this book, but I'll just try as much as possible to be as precise and to, to be precise and concise as possible. First things first, let's just give a summary. I think I'm going to be taking this should I say this outline now. I realize that most times when I do a review, I don't give a summary. I just go ahead to start talking about it, assuming that anyone who is listening has probably read the book, but I apologize. I'm gonna do better. So I decided that I'm going to do a brief summary, very brief summary about the entirety of the book before going into the themes and the things that make sense to me. These days, I don't like calling it book reviews because it just feels like undermining or putting a book under scrutiny in my eye, and I've never been a person that really enjoys that aspect of things, maybe scrutinizing things or critiquing things. I just it's not that that's never been who I am. So rather than calling it reviewing, we'll just talk about it. We are just talking about it. I'm talking about my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, the things that garnered while at it. I'm not talking about how good she wrote it, how bad she wrote it. Unless for few books so that just do not just are not up to the standard. But I feel like I'm talking to So yes, you guys, let's get into it. So yes, Babel. So Babel is a book. It follows a story of a young Chinese boy, Robin Swift. Although Robin Swift isn't his name from birth. He is a Chinese boy, but it was the name that should I say, his guardian gave to him. Robin Swift was saved by was rescued, yes, was saved from a cholera outbreak in Canton in China by Professor Lovell. So it was Professor Lovell that gave him the name Robin Swift when he was taking him out of Canton, and was like, since you're going to England, that he has to pick an English name, that he cannot bear, or that he cannot go by a Chinese name for complications in pronunciations. But as we go down the book, we'll see one of the reasons why that is. But he gave him the name Robin Swift, or rather he asked him to choose a name. And so Professor Lovell, later became his guardian, takes him to England to be trained in languages, just for one purpose alone: to be able to attend Oxford's University's Royal Institute of Translation. That's Babel. That is exactly what Babel is. Babel is the Oxford University's Royal Institute of Translation. What they mainly do, all they do there is translate. Exactly, translation. Exactly as translation is translating one language to another. Basically, other languages, Chinese, Russia. I think they even made mention of Igbo somewhere in the book. A place or two, there was rather, is it was or where? Yeah, I think where there were mentions of Igbo language and some West African languages, so it was chipped in one or two times. But basically, translating languages from French, Italy, was it Italian? Yes, I guess it's Italian, Latin, German, yes, Hindi, and all, the a host of them into English. So Babel is a place. in the story where we're given, oh my goodness, so much so much filler words. Well, I digress. Babel is a place where language and magic they intertwine. The translators they use silver working, and it's a silver working is a process that channels the lost meanings between words, and it channels it into translation to turn it into powerful enchantment. It has a little bit of fantasy to it, because it has a hint of magic to it, but it is not so much so that it's all over our face. It's just subtle. It is subtle and as well not subtle. So it's not, you wouldn't even exactly call it a fantasy per se. You wouldn't even think of it as fantasy. It's just a subtle, it's just like it's on the ground. It's not in our face. She didn't the author didn't throw it all up in our face, but that's the basics of what silver working is, where they use the lost meaning between translations. They turn it between translations from one language to another, and they turn it into powerful enchantment. Those enchantments are used to enable daily living, to make wash clothes faster, to make the train work faster, and the likes of it. It's how the British Empire worked as at the time that it's dated. So the book is dated. It's dated in the 1830s, and so it was concluded according to the book. The book was dated to give us the 1830s and concluded in the 1840s. In a way, it gives a classical feel. That's the beauty of another beauty. But let me not jump ahead. So yes, where did I stop? The British Empire runs on these silver workings and this enchantment. So it is how it maintains its dominance through the manipulation. Basically, it's just manipulation of the language itself. Oh, you guys, I feel like I've used a lot of but I digress again. Let's continue. So as Robin grows older and he tries to integrate himself into England, into Oxford, Oxford becomes a place of a dream, at the same time a trap. It becomes a trap, and we'll see that as we go forward. It became a place of beauty. He was enamored by it. It became a place of privilege and unbearable contradiction. So it's like both the positive and the negative as well. And he had friends, Rami, Victor, and Letty. So the three of them, or rather the four of them, Rami is Indian, Victor is, I hope I'm pronounced, I try to learn the pronunciation because it's French, and Letty, she is English. The four of them try to navigate the joy of belonging, and also as well as the ache that their brilliance serves an entire empire that is built on exploitation. So they tried to navigate that life, how their brilliance and all of that isn't exactly as it seems on the surface, but majorly the fact that they are contributing to an empire that is built, or that works, an empire that its foundation is rooted in exploitation. And so eventually, as time goes on, Robin is forced to confront an impossible question: that if knowledge and language are being used to uphold oppression, can rebellion and even violence be justified in tearing that system down? So he just all of those things, how exploitation works and violence being used to tear down that system. But in summary, concluding the summary, at its core, Babel is majorly about translation. It's about power and the complicity, and how the language it's so beautiful how Rebecca, how she interwove language in such an intellectual manner. She brought it through, and a speculative fiction too. It's just really beautiful. But also our language that we love, language that seems inconsequential. Language is just language. It's not exactly supposed to be a big deal per se. And we see how language that we see, as simple as it is, can be used or was used as tools of control, and how the the very basic act of translation, how it carries both loss and resistance. And it's just so beautiful. I feel like I'm saying that but really it is a beautiful piece. So that's basically the summary of it, is how language was is being used as a tool for exploitation, and how in the process of translation, translation, there is loss and there's resistance. While reading this book, one of the things that came to me, or came to my mind while reading it, was the Bible. For some reason, was the Bible. And that's why, if you guys can remember, in the first episode or the second episode of this podcast, I mentioned that oftentimes a good way to read the Bible is for you to read it with a dictionary, or you read it with a concordance, or something like Enduring Word, or all of those things. Because sometimes when you read the Bible, the Bible, English is not the main language of the Bible. The Bible wasn't exactly written in English, and the Bible was taken from different scrolls. One, they found this scroll, they found this scroll, they found these scrolls, and some of those scrolls too were written in different languages, and they were brought together by the leading and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and it became a Bible. So sometimes you will see one particular word. It could be in Greek, it could be in Hebrew, it could be in Latin, and one particular word is translated into two different meanings, based on the context. For some reason, it just took my mind. I'm not even trying to be over this thing, over spiritual, to be religious, rather not spirit to be I'm not even trying to be religious or anything about it, but my mind just drifted towards it like that, that I just got felt remembered about the Bible, that there are times where you will read a part of the Bible, and it just, for some reason, it just feels odd and weird, and it just doesn't make sense to you. But when you now make research, and you see the initial term that word was used, the original language that was used for that word, and the most suitable translation that suits that word, and in a way it gives you a better understanding of that particular verse, that sentence, or that chapter that you're reading. So I digress a little bit, but that was just one of the things I got from when I was looking at when I was reading this book, from that translation aspect. And yes, as we've gone over with the summary was, I know, a bit, I wrote it down. That's why my seem, I don't know what word to use, but I wrote it down because I'm really prepared. I'm really prepared about this book, and I really want to get my thoughts across and be as articulated as possible. I want to try as much as possible, so not to ramble. It's a really great book, and I feel like I owe it to myself to do justice to talking about this book. That's why the summary might come off. I was reading part of it and was just choking in my and I was just choking in my own inside. So yes, let's talk about the author. We always talk about our authors. So our author is Rebecca F. Kuang, or R.F. Kuang, and she's a Chinese American author. She's a scholar, and yes, I realized that this is no, not genre. This is a style of writing. She weaves in history, languages, and power into speculative fiction. You guys, I've been reading for so long, and the examples of what speculative fictions are. I know the examples, but I've never really come across the term speculative fiction, not until I was reading about RF Kwang, and I'm really, well, we learn new things every day. We learn new things, and this is one new thing that I'm really glad about, that I learned. So apparently a speculate hey way Jesus. So oh my gosh, I feel like, should I edit this out or not? But anyways, let's go on. So a speculative fiction is an umbrella term for stories that imagine worlds or reality different from our own. Like when they come up with imaginations and worlds are totally different, they do not even tally or come close to the way we would imagine, or to the way our world is not imagined. it is real. So to the way ours is, so basically is any stories that bends reality, bends the limits of reality a bit, a whole lot, but that is the essence of what speculative fictions is or are. They are books that are written or stories that are written in a way that the writer bends the limits of reality. Some of them are science fiction, the dystopian, alternate history, and magical realism. You see that magical realism. I feel like this thing falls into that this particular the oh my god, another but this particular term, it falls into this particular genre. Haruki Murakami, he uses a little bit of magical realism, although most of his book gives a realistic his books give a realistic feel. I'm saying books, it's just one no. It's just one I read though, but it gives a realistic feel at the same time, a speculative feel too. So I think a merge of both, but basically that's what speculative fiction is. It uses fiction to and it uses fiction as a tool, and he uses that imagination that it creates to criticize real world systems like politics, our faith, culture, and human nature. For Babel, I think it is more of politics, culture, and human nature. There really wasn't much about faith in it, but more of human nature, politics, and culture. And I think although she was born in China, that's our author, but she moved to the United States at a very early age and ended up studying there, but ended up going to Oxford, that's in England, for I think a master's or PhD and thereabout. And I think that is what brought about, or that is, should I say, an inspiration? I think an inspiration is what we'll call it, because the book is set in Oxford, England. That was brought about the inspiration of it. She's basically an historian and translator, and my dad had beyond what I read, though she's really an intelligent person. With this book that I read, this book is one of the most intellectual books I've ever read. I've read good books, so I've read a lot of books in different genre where the author has brought in where the author has interwoven different scenarios, different realities, and they've just overall given imagine they've brought about their imaginations way beyond imagination itself. But this one, she brought in language, history, culture, and in such an intellectual manner. I really am proud of people like this, and she's so young. Like, she really is young. For some reason, I don't know her. I've not met her before. This is my first time of reading her book. In fact, I was quite skeptical about buying it, because I used to tell you guys that I don't like taking recommendation from Instagram. Oftentimes they are a disappointment. I've had some that I read and it turned out great, but even then I'm always very skeptical. But for some reason, I just needed something new. I needed something that was different from what I've been reading, from my normal. I just needed a fresh outlook, a fresh aspect to books, because I was feeling myself slowly drifting into another book slump again. And I knew I needed something great, something that was really spectacular, something that just blew my mind in a subtle or in a loud manner, in whatever way, but I needed something that was really good, and I'm glad I bought it. In fact, I do not regret the amount I spent on it. It is worth every amount, every bit of money that I spent on getting it, and the stress too that I went through for it to get delivered. It is really an intellectual book. I feel like if you read it, if anyone reads it, it gives you garner a bit of not even a bit, a ton of knowledge and exposure in a way. So, right. Before I go into rambling, I could go on and on about it. But yes, let's explore our themes. Let's explore our themes in this book. We've gone over the summary and who our author is. There are a lot of themes in this book. In fact, a lot of major themes and sub themes. Well, we'll be majorly talking about the themes that start screaming at you like this while you read the book. Maybe if it's not too long, I don't want to get too long, I don't want to talk too I don't want to bore you guys, but we could explore some things, but major things that I found that really spoke to me while I was reading this. One is language. That, in fact, that is the basics of the whole book. Language. Language as words, as power, as a tool of manipulation, as a tool of exploitation. Language was used in a weird, not weird, no, weird is not the word, in a diverse manner. Or it was, language was used not just in the writing but in the plot of a story itself. Language, I would not in a million years, no, okay, maybe that's exaggeration a bit, but I wouldn't have sat down to think about how language can be used in such manner, both positively and negatively. Language, not just in the writing itself but in the plot, like in the plot itself, I wouldn't have thought that language can be used in such diverse manner, or in such a way that it exploits, in such a powerful, it has such power, it has such authority. Language, yes, we know there are some ways that language can be used for exploitation, but in this way, in the way the author gives us, in the way the author wrote this book, and even in the plot itself, in the story itself, besides the writing, just beyond the writing of the book itself, how language was used, how language was used, like, yes, exploitation self, how our language was exploited into magic. And you know that, and through this book I was able to learn that there is no perfect translation. There is no perfect translation. It reminded me, while I was reading this too, it reminded me of a Japanese poet. I think it's a quote I came across. I can't remember, but somewhere where a Japanese poet was like, he does not permit his work to be to be translated. All his works are in, I think, in Japanese. Maybe he doesn't permit it or something along those lines. It's been a very long time, but that just came to my mind while I was reading that I remember a time I read something about that, where a Japanese poet was like, there is no essence to translation, especially poems, because it can never hold the same meaning, or the same, or the weight and the heaviness that the author meant for it, or that the main original language meant, the message that the original language is trying to pass across, that it can never come close. Yes, maybe it can come close, but that it can never really bear the weight of what the original language really is saying. And I really came to understanding what that Japanese author meant or was trying to say while I read this book, that a lot of things are lost, a whole lot, a plethora of things are lost while translating. Yes, you might get something similar, you might come to understand in a way, you might come to have an inkling and understanding in a way, in fact, even beyond the way self, of what the original language is saying, but there's still loss. There is no perfect translation, basically. That's what it meant. And 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 like I said, like I've mentioned earlier, that the foundation of Babel, in this book, the story itself, the foundation of Babel, that's the Royal Institute of Translation, is on language itself, and not language in a way that helps, or in a way that does good for the good of other people, but in a way that exploits other people, other languages. Because like Chinese, Russia, India, French, so there were a lot of translation that was going on, and it was for the benefit of the British Empire. So we learnt so this book, this we learned, rather we learned, or I learned, or this book taught us about how language was used as a tool of power, how Babel used language, the translation of language, as a tool of power, by using it into silver working. And that silver working transformed the gaps between words into magical energy. So the empire controls that magic. The empire does it, they don't give it out. You would expect that after using this languages from other people, they take language, like languages from I feel like I should have known one or two examples, but language, they could translate a word in a word that means fast in Chinese or in Mandarin, and translate it to English. And when they translate it to English using silver working, the magical energy that is generated from that silver working helps trains to run faster. In fact, the way she wrote the book is really, really, really spectacular, that I feel like I might still not do enough justice. And unless you actually do read the book, you might not have a good understanding of what I'm trying to say. So they use it as a tool, and they not sat on that. They exploited they exploited people's languages to grow or to better the British Empire and control. They control the language, and by extension the people as well. So that was the first thing that just kept screaming. In fact, that's the essence of the book. That was the foundation. That's the basic one of the basic things that was spoken about language as a tool, and not just as a tool, but as a tool of exploitation, a tool of power, a tool of exploiting not just the language itself, but people in extension. Then yes, another thing was colonialism and exploitation. I feel like England or UK or England or Britain or the British people, one of the first things that you can associate them with is colonialism and exploitations, to be very, very fair. I think that's anyone, even till now there are still some Indians that still have beef. Indians, or personally, not even as a nation itself, but Indians, there are still some Indians that still have beef with um with England or Britain as a whole, because of their colonialism and their exploitation. They colonize, oh my god. They colonized us as well, and I can go on and on and on and on about countries like that. I feel like one of the things that you can attribute Britain with, or the British Empire itself, is colonialism. And not just colonialism, but exploitation. I feel like they are interchangeable in a way, because colonialism, the essence of colonialism is just to exploit in a way. It's just to exploit. They exploited India over 200 years for spices, and a host of other things like that. But for some reason, I don't know why India just stands out for me when I think about exploitation and colonialism, because they colonized us. Oh my god, they colon they colonized us as well. So, like, and in this book, or rather, even not just outside of this book, to Britain, England, it gives an air of prestige. Not just air sef, it is prestige in a way. It is prestige. And according to this book, we see that with all of this prestige that Oxford has, that England has, it is built on exploitation of people's languages, and in extension the people themselves. Because these languages that they are translating, the English people do not know it. What they know is English. English is the language they know, that they are familiar with. So for them to be able to translate from one language to another, they need people that speak that said language. So that is where people like Robin come in. Robin is from Canton in China. Remy, yeah, is it Remy? I keep forgetting his name. Yes, Rami, rather, his name is Ramirez, but as a as short form, he turned it to Rami to make it easier for English people to be able to pronounce. Unlike Robin, that had to change his name entirely. Rami found a way for him to still hold on to his identity. Rami is Indian. Victor, she is Haiti, but Asian rather. Not Haiti is the name of the country, but Asian. So she is Asian, and although that is her origin, but because from the book we later realized that we were told that she's French, because her name is French. But later down in the book we came to realize she's actually Asian from Haiti. But because her mother was taken as a maid from Haiti to Paris, by a rich man, and that was how she grew up being French. But the origin, her main origin, so you could say she's half Asian and French, because she grew up French, but her origin, her parent, her mother and father, they are Asian. And then we have Letty. Letty is English. I think she is the oddity among the four friends, and we see how the impact of that oddity, or of that oddness. That English sounds somehow. That grammar sounds somehow, but bear with me. And we see the impact of that oddity, how it impacted them down the road, later down the line in the story. So we see, so those are the examples. Then we have other examples of other people, but they are not the main characters. Those four are the main characters. Those four are the main characters, are the main protagonists in the story. So basically, when I was talking about, yes, talking about how they exploit people, because England, English people don't, the English people now, only it's only English they know. They do not know other languages. So they bring other people from other languages and bring them to translate. They bring them to translate, and that's how they use them as a tool for exploitations. Main protagonists, there are people from, aside from Letty, there are people from other walks of life, from other countries, and they are brought in because of their brilliance. They are nurtured. Like after they are brought in from an early stage, they are not immediately accepted into Oxford. They go through years of rigorous learning to be able to be accepted into the prestigious university. Each and every one of them have to learn different languages. I think Robin had to learn German, Latin, Rami had to learn Rami spoke Arabic, Persian, Urdu, and the host of it. And then we have Victoria. I feel like that pronunciation is not right. But anyways, she French, Latin, and some other languages. So they brought their brilliance, all of this, into, to should I say, to contribute to the British Empire. But even in spite of all of this, in spite of their brilliance, because the British Empire actually needed them, they acted like they didn't, but they did, because the way our story was, the way the plot was, or the way it was built for us, the empire relied on the magic that silver working bread, magic to make clothes wash faster, to magic to make the trains go faster, magic that helped the bridges, magic that helped, a lot of things that seemed like the normal day tasks were fueled by magic that came from silver working, that came from translation from one language into English, other languages into English. So they needed their brilliance. There were a host of other characters in this university, but these were our main protagonists. So they needed their brilliance, and they acted like they were doing them a favor, but they needed them, because how many English people could speak English, or could speak Persian, or could speak French, unless they learnt it from people who did know it. And even in spite of this brilliance, yet their identities as colonized subjects were never fully accepted. They never fully accepted them. I think that takes us to our third thing, that's identity and belonging. Indeed, I wasn't the one in the book. I wasn't the one going through it, but I felt I felt what I felt what they felt in such strong manner. And at some point, there were times where I had to close the book, because it just got too much for me to bear. Not in a bad way, but I think I'm just someone that just translates feelings in books a lot. I translate them a lot, and I feel them a lot. But the beautiful thing about it, or what makes it easier for me, is that I'm able to discard of that feeling as easy as it is for me to pick them up. I'm able to let go of them, rather not discard, to let go of them as easy. So I felt a lot of all of those things, racism, and very sorrowful. Should I call it sorrowful? Very painful, because these are things that people still go through in this day and age. People, immigrants from different walks of life into a particular place, especially in European countries. the Indians, Japanese, Africans, the Asians. The issue of identity and belonging, it's a long going, should I say, crisis as far as immigration is concerned. It seems like issue that most likely will never be solved, even no matter how much protest, no matter how much exposure, no matter how much knowledge you try to pass across, no matter how much on the teachings that might happen, no matter how much they try to educate people. It still feels like it's a crisis that has been there for a long time, and most likely will be there for a long time. Might not even be fully solved, even maybe people might able to coexist with it, or immigrants might able to lay that weight added to them wherever they are. I feel like that is just my feeling with the way I see it, and when I just look at the world in general. But I digress again. So we see how Rami, especially Robin really dealt with that issue of identity crisis. One thing I loved about Rami, I loved the way he was able to easily adapt, not adapt per se, but was able to easily to be able to have his work around with his identity. And I think that what helped him was because of his upbringing in India. His father served as a, should I say, a butler to a colonel, that one of the colonels that were in, was it a colonel or a general? I can't really remember, that came to serve in India. One of the should I say, people that the queen, I guess, sent over to oversee the, should I call it kulu? To oversee the expectations of whatever. So I think, having watched his father go through insult, embarrassment, that shame and disgrace, disgracing them, calling them names, acting like they do not know anything, acting like they do not have intelligence, it helped him to integrate faster in you know in England, in Oxford. So in a way, I feel like he gave him an upper hand, and he helped him to deal with the issue of identity crisis, and helped him to still able to retain his identity. So Rami was still able to retain his identity as an Indian person, as someone who is with a black color. It helped him to retain his identity and not to necessarily lose it. He was able to translate his situation. He found himself. Like, if they wanted to get like sweets or biscuits from a roadside vendor, and that vendor is trying to put him down, he will come up with a story that matches the thought process that particular vendor is having. One prime example was when I think they were going out to buy sweets or trying to buy biscuits. I can't remember that particular thing. The vendor was trying to put Rami down, just their skin color, and Rami just interwove the story that he was a prince, and he's still a prince, but whereby he really isn't a prince. I feel like I'm not doing just enough justice to that story, but he was able to integrate. It was like, just like a chameleon. How a chameleon, when a chameleon is on a particular surface, takes up that color, but while still able to retain his identity. And we see how they suffered a lot with their identity, especially Rami and Victor, because Victor she's from Haiti, and she had dark color, and Rami too had dark color. So we saw their struggles with getting into some places, how they won't allow them into some restaurants, some bar, some boutiques, and all of those things. Those were not the word, but those are the words that come easier to describe it, because I keep forgetting how it was hard for them to get into these places, because they do not trust them, because of normal racial issues. And you would think that because Robin almost passed for a white person, because later in the story we came to realize that Professor Lovell was his father. Although we she didn't one I think one of the things that we she didn't show us was how that happened, how Lovell impregnated his mother and left him in China to grow up before coming to China to take him. So that was another way that they exploited people. It was like planting seeds. I mean, that was what I kept thinking about. That was what Professor Lovell did, because later in the story, we found out that Robin had an elder stepbrother, Griffin, who was bettered. He also was Chinese and was bettered the same way. And it seemed like it was something that Professor Lovell was doing. Like, he will plant seed, he will plant seed, maybe rape the mother, maybe act like he liked the mother. We didn't know how that went down, how the relationship came about, how they came to be, that Professor Lovell and Griffin's mother, as well as Robin's mother, how they came together, how they met each other. I think maybe he took advantage of their situations, because at that time, Robin's mother had an elder brother who was a gambler and gambled away all their wealth. So maybe he used that as a way to take advantage of them. It wasn't really stated. We really didn't see that, but that is how I figured out, or I imagined the story. So it now came about like Professor Lovell was planting seeds. He already knew what he wanted. He wanted someone that he could control, someone that he could take charge over, someone that he could mold into what he wanted, and then exploit them in a way that makes them vulnerable, makes them appreciative, makes them feel like they owe it to him, their life, their success, the good thing they're having in England, whereby it really isn't so. So that was how I saw it, and that still interwove into identity and belonging. And now, when you see the story, when you follow the story, so when you follow the story of these four people, you see how there were so much issues with identity, with them having identity and belonging. They now became people who belonged nowhere. Especially Robin, most especially Robin. He became too white. He's too Chinese. He's too foreign for the English, and at the same time, he's too English for the Chinese. He was belonging everywhere and nowhere, and that was a major thing throughout, especially for the foreign students. It was the thing that the one thing they dealt with: identity, them finding a place of belonging throughout the book, throughout the novel, throughout the story. And it just hurt me. I just felt so much pain and so much longing, and for some reason I just wanted to hug these characters, because I can't imagine being uprooted from a place that you call home, not even willingly. That's the funny part. Is one thing when you are willingly uprooted, when you say that, oh no, I'm not okay with this place. Let me try for better things. Let me try my luck in other places. Let me see how that will turn out. It's one thing if that's your own personal decision, and it's easier, not maybe not full on easy, but you are able to take it better, because you know that, oh, this was my decision, I took this decision to move to this place. But when it is that you are uprooted from a place that you call home, not by your own decision, not willingly, not by your own volition, by someone who feels they are higher than you, or someone who feels they are this superior race than you are. And it just goes to show how much went down in history, because I believe, me, I'm a believer that every fiction, no matter how unrealistic it seems, has a hint of reality. For you see, whenever it comes to especially historical fiction, at least 30% of them are woven from reality, or they took inspiration from reality. And we've read time and time over again, we've seen movie adaptation, we've seen book adaptations of all of these things that these people went through. You've heard of people who went through all of these things, that maybe are alive, or their children's children, who narrated these stories. And it just goes, the funny part is that these things still do happen, maybe not in such favor or in such magnitude, but they still do happen. When you hear of some of your friends or family members that are abroad, and you hear of the things they go through, it might not even be so loud or all up in your face, but it's so subtle. It's so subtle. I've heard of stories. I even know of some people, maybe not in close contact, that have become too oyinboish for their Nigerian friends. They are not as accepted. Shebi they are the ones that left us in Nigeria and traveled abroad. And at the same time, while being abroad, they are too African for those that are abroad. And they have to deal with all of this at the same time, have to make ends meet and have to make do for themselves. So it was such a big issue, and they had to deal with it over and over throughout the story. Then yes, another thing that I really loved was knowledge and complicity. It made you think that, can those two, are they mutually exclusive? Those having knowledge and still be complicit, that it just gave you a feeling of juxtaposing the two of them. And in a way, I felt our author asking a question, maybe not so, but in my mind, I felt like she was asking a question, that is knowledge ever truly neutral? And that's the truth. That is it actually, can you stay neutral when you have knowledge? And it reminded me of this phrase that ignorance is bliss sometimes. That sometimes knowledge comes with a burden. It does come with it, because truly, when you have knowledge, I doubt you can ever, in fact, in a way, you dare not be neutral. That is it possible for you to be knowledgeable and be non-complicit? And those two, it just felt like you were pitting the two together and trying to make comparison. Because Robin's, according with our story, Robin is our main protagonist, is our main, is the person we are there to see. Although the other three supporting cast, they are supporting characters were there, but Robin is our main guy, right? So Robin's education gave him power. Robin, this local Chinese boy that was saved from a cholera outbreak that killed his mother, killed his aunties, killed his uncles and every of his family member, and left him an orphan. No one, nobody, nothing. He had no one except Professor Lovell, who refused all through till the end of the book, refused, never admitted that he was his father. In fact, even the book never told us that he was his father. We just picked from this from this utterances, from these situations, that, oh yes, Professor Lovell was Griffin and Robin's father. And that circles back to the feeling of superior race, because how will he take responsibility, how will he make it known or take responsibility of the fact that, oh, he is Robin's father? Even I remember at the beginning, when Robin chose the name Robin, and Professor Lovell was like, he needed a surname as well, and he was like, oh, he could take Lovell, and he said no, that would mean or indicate or infer that he was his father, and that he's not his father, he's just his guardian. Whereas he actually is his father, but he refused to take that ownership. All throughout the book, it was never stated. It was just inferred, and we picked it up that, oh yeah, Professor Lovell was Robin's father. So in so doing, circling back to the to knowledge and complicity, Robin is this person that is giving education, someone that was saved from cholera. He was saved from a cholera outbreak, was brought to England, was given food, was given shelter, was given he was given education that he didn't have, and he didn't have in China. And there was a probability that if he had stayed, in fact, he was saved. Yes, he was saved. He was already at the point of death when Professor Lovell came and used silver working to save him and to heal him. So there's probability that he would have died if Professor Lovell hadn't come into the picture on time, might have had, because every other person had died, and he was at the verge of death when Professor Lovell came in. And so yeah, now he's been granted this, he's been given education, he's been given basic things of life, he's been given knowledge, he's been given the gift of knowledge. And this knowledge, education, it gives him power. But power, not power in enough that it gives him identity. Power in a way, at least that's how I saw it. Power in a way that just allows him to exist. and existence in a way that he doesn't even he existence in a way that, oh, we allow you to be here, you do not have the right. So in a way self is just there, is just there at the mercy. But also this education that he has, this education that gives him power, also ties into the same system that oppresses others, that oppresses him, that made him a tool of oppression. So you can imagine, yes, this system has given you education, this system has given you something, this system has given you a gift, this system has given you this system has given you education, this system has given you food, has given you shelter, has given you the ability to study in the most prestigious place in the world. But at the same time, this the very system that oppresses others. So how do you work around that kind of thing? Ah, one part, in one area, in one aspect, you are grateful for the education that you've gotten, for the other things, the good things of life that you've got, because he was on a scholarship. He, Rami, Letty and Victoria, they were on a scholarship. So yes, this particular system has given you education, has given you not beyond basics of life, has given you something. But at the same time, you cannot deny the knowledge that this system is built on the oppression of people in the similar situation and circumstances as you. So how do you work with that kind of thing? How do you make your way around? So it forces you, not just as a reader, to come to learn that it's an uncomfortable truth. It is very uncomfortable. It makes you to learn that, is it silence or neutrality? That, where do you stand, silence or neutrality, in the face of injustice? And it just gives you this show that also in itself is a form of violence. And while I was reading this, or while I was going through this particular phase or this particular aspect of this book, it reminded me of a quote that I found sometime about, from, I think it was written by Ellie Wiesel. It reads that we must take sides, because neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim, and silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And this is one particular subject that even me as a person, I've been battling with personally. The course of taking the course, not like a course where you curse someone, of being neutral. Because in a way, neutrality means cowardice. It's something I've come to accept. In a way, in most situations, there are some situations where you might have to stay neutral, you might have to, be neutral, you can't take sides. But more often than not, 80% of the time, neutrality is a form of violence or injustice in its own self. And in a way also, it signifies cowardice or lack of bravery, of not being brave, of not taking a side. Because being neutral is also taking a side, if you like, whether you like it or not. But rather than taking the side of the oppressed, you are taking the side of the oppressor, or the tormentor, rather than the tormented. Because when you are neutral, oftentimes when you are neutral, you are trying to be okay, you are trying to be like, oh yes, I know the oppressor, I know the oppressed rather than the tormented. I know they are being tormented, I know they are being oppressed, I know they are the victim, but I want to be there for them. But at the same time, I can't afford to face the wrath, or I can't afford to go against the tormentor. So yes, while on one hand you feel pity, you feel sympathy, you feel empathetic towards the victim, you still can't afford, not to be in the good books of the oppressor. That is the short and long of the matter, oftentimes, when a person has to take neutrality. And sometimes that in itself, it's a form of violence in its own. And personally, I've been dealing with, as regards to spiritual things, though not just spiritual things, that sometimes I know that, oh, this is wrong. Although the Bible doesn't stately, it's not stated, but it's inferred. And when you walk with God to a point, there are some things that just, all things they are not expendable for you. You can do some things, but still they are not things that you should be doing and you know that, but at the same time you don't want to come off as being too harsh, you don't want to come off as being too religious, you don't want to come off as being spirit coco, you don't want to come off as being holy. So you try to take the neutral side. Yes, so this the Bible doesn't particular say it, but at the same time, it makes you a coward, it makes you less of a person in a way. And that's what I've come to realize and to come to understand, that taking being neutral, staying being taking a neutral side or being on the neutral doesn't do what you think it is doing. It really doesn't. It's better for you to know who you are, what you stand for, and stand for it to the end, come what may, than being a coward, lacking bravery and courage, and just being in the middle. It doesn't do the thing you believe it does. And I loved that I was able to pick this every time I kept reading and I kept thinking about Robin, because it took him a long time for him to get to a place where he could take a stand, because he kept having a struggle between gratitude and alienation. There were people who had gone ahead, like his elder step brother, who had gone ahead, who understood the struggle. We were trying to explain to him or show him the way that as much as you love Babel, as much as you love England and what it had done for you, its very core is at the essence of exploitation of others, people like you, people of your color, of your culture, of your language, that there is no how you can stand no matter what they might have done for you. And the funny part is that assuming all they did, after even all they did, they still accepted them. Maybe it would have been easier to stand with England or with Babel in this, as the case might be. But even with all of that, they still feel racial injustice, they did not belong. They kept making it seem that, oh, we are doing you a favor, you do not belong here, this is not a place for you, over and over and over and over, time and time again. So they never even really belonged. They were just a tool for exploitation. Their brilliance, their mind, their intellect was a tool to make the British Empire grow more, to make them indestructible, to make them the center of the world. That was the main, the aim of the British Empire, to be the center of the world. And they used people from different aspects of the world to fuel that ambition, while stealing from them and not giving back. It's one thing to take from somebody and give back. If you take and give back, it's still okay. But while you are taking, you still want to keep taking and still want to keep exploiting. That is where it stops making sense. Like, that is where it does not make any more sense. No matter, it doesn't make any more sense that even if you want to take, you give back. You've taken from me, now give back. But no, you still want to keep taking, you still want to keep taking, while still wanting you to be appreciated for taking. So it's quite complicated and simple at the same time, and it just is so intelligent. I love the way she wrote it, that he made me question a lot of things. He made me question a lot of thoughts or morals that I have, that yes, you might say you have this, but at the same time, are you being complicit? Should this be the ground you're standing on? Why are you in and out? Why not just take a stand? And he had me thinking about a lot of things, personal things outside of this book, that opened my eyes to some beliefs, or should I say some thought processes, that I felt like I should be more to take better and more stand on. I feel like I've thought a lot about that. Then we have another theme. We have this last, most likely last theme that we'll be exploring, and that's revolution and the cost of change. I think I've mentioned it. I can't remember the book that we spoke about. It's probably A Thousand Splendid Sun, or As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows, or it probably The Book Thief. I can't remember, but there was a book that we checked, that we talked about, that I mentioned that I've come to realize that there is no revolution without violence, and there is no change without violence. And that really scares me, because as much as we want, there is no peaceful change. There is no change that is peaceful, especially when you want to change from when you want things to change from bad to better, or at least good, even if it's not better, if it's not best, but you want something to change from the negative to the positive, there is a need for violence to a fault. If you want revolution, there is no revolution without war. And sometimes it just makes you think that it scares you the cost that comes or that might come with that change. That for change to occur, for change to happen, there might be need for violence. And this was one thing that Robin had to learn the hard way. While reading, we read about how he struggled. First, he struggled with the idea that, he was enabling the oppressor. That's Babel, England, Oxford, whatever. And before then, he had to struggle with gratitude. He had to struggle between being grateful and coming to realization that yes, he might be standing with the oppressor. After that session or that phase of his life, he had to come to another realization that at times revolution has to come with violence. There is no peaceful revolution. Time and time again, history has shown us, history of the world, history of countries, history has shown us over time, over years, over centuries, that there is no revolution, there is no change that doesn't come with war, blood, loss of people, loss of lives, loss of properties, loss of a lot of things. And this shows that to us, that for revolution to happen, for there to be even a tiny bit of change, sometimes it might not even end up being a large change, but it could be something minuscule, just little, not a little bit, will bring about a whole lot of violence, a whole lot of violence. And in a way, it scares me because there is a lot that is wrong in the world. There is a lot that is not right with the world, with countries, everybody with the issues they are facing in their country, in their nation, and all of that. And it scares me that as much as we really want change, as much as change must happen, what are the things we might have to lose? What are the things that change might take? What are the things that violence that has to come for change to happen? What are the things that it might steal from us? Who are the people that we might lose? What are the things that ours that might go, that we might lose? For example, now Rami lost all his friends, he lost his brother, the Amish society that in Babel, all of them died. Rami died, Victor died. Okay, Victor didn't die, Rami died. Everyone that I knew, everyone that I loved, everyone that mattered, they all died. In the end, he had to give his life at the end for revolution, that some reform is never enough. It is never enough. It is never enough to bring about change. The system itself must fall. Sometimes I think another thing that I realized from this book is that sometimes rebellion isn't bad. Sometimes when rebellion, in context to some issues, in context to some situations, sometimes rebellion is needed. Sometimes you have to rebel. Sometimes you have to rebel against a system that is bent, against a system that its foundation, it is founded, it is built on oppression and exploitation, or taking from you and not giving back. Sometimes you have to rebel, and that reform, some oftentimes, most of the time, is never enough. Because if an oppressor if an oppressor that is an oppressor, or a person who becomes an oppressor, for them to ever become an oppressor, they do not believe in peace. They do not see you as something enough for them to give, to grant, should I say, to look at as meaningful. For an oppressor to become an oppressor, or for a person to become an oppressor, or when you call someone an oppressor, they are an oppressor because they do not count, or they do not see anything beyond their thought process. When you see about maybe the oppression of the blacks by the whites, one thing that makes them oppressive, one thing that makes them oppressor, is because they do not see people who are black, they do not see them on the same wavelength. They see themselves as a superior race, as superior beings. They see themselves as better, they matter. People who are black, they do not matter. They are rags. They are not. They do they are not people, they are not people in their eyes. They are animals at the very least. When they think about them, they are just beings. They are not humans. They are not on the same wavelength. They feel superior. And not just blacks, people with the other colors that are not fully tanned white. So that is what oppression is. So if an oppressor is an oppressor, then you know that reform is not possible when with an oppressor. If it's peaceful, an oppressor will not, it will not move an oppressor. Something that comes as reform or peaceful will not move an oppressor. For an oppressor to be moved, there is a need for rebellion and violence and force. Rebellion, force, violence, for you to be able to say, yay, oppressor, look at me, I am the oppressed. You are not even worth being looked at. You are not worth it. You are not worth being thought over the second time. So for you to be able to say, yes, an oppressor, look at me, the oppressed, you have to rebel. You have to go out of your way. You have to use force. You have to be something else that you might not be, or you have to grow into something else that, at least, even if it doesn't fully terrifies the oppressor, but at least makes them weary, makes them, oh, take a look and be like, wow, okay, this is beginning to look dangerous to me. For anything, any amount of change to happen, you have to rebel. And I think that's what this book showed us. And it was I had a bittersweet ending, really, because at the end we saw how Robin grew from this child who didn't know much, who didn't see life really as it was, and who was protect should I say who was protected by ignorance. But the moment he was able to see life as it is, the moment he was able to see what the real world was, it's like a butterfly that is in its cocoon, and finally shedding off, and finally shedding off and fully growing into what a butterfly is. When it hasn't really become a butterfly, and it's just still being shielded in its cocoon, and it's just there. It hasn't metamorphosized, it hasn't changed. But the moment it becomes a butterfly, it sheds off that skin, it sheds it off. It takes time to build, and it changes. It becomes something beautiful, a force to be reckoned with. And I find myself comparing Robin's story, comparing his journey with that of the becoming of a butterfly. Though it wasn't beautiful in a positive manner, but beautiful nevertheless. And we saw his journey. He didn't live a long life. He didn't live a long life, but we saw that he died for his cause. And that history will forever, if it were real, if it were reality, and it wasn't like a story that our author gave us, history would remember him as that man, as that boy that fought for what was right, that fought for his people, that stood tall against an empire and saw it fall in a way. Because there was a tower of Babel, that was like literally a tower. That was the, should I call it, the university, the building structure. And he did see it fall. He fell with that tower. I think I love that symbolism with the biblical tower. How we saw how And the fact that we saw that tower fall, though the change that occurred might just be minuscule, it wasn't a big change. There's still a bigger revolution. There's still things, bigger force that has to be applied for the British Empire to be really moved. But I loved that symbolism where that tower that stood tall in Oxford and stood as a symbol of magnitude, symbol of authority and power. I loved how our author gave us and made it fall. Though Robin fell with the tower, but I loved that that system fell, that building fell, that Babel it fell. It gives a juxtaposition with our biblical Tower of Babel, and I loved what she did there. I saw it and I loved it, and it just goes to show that I love the fact that she made it so that that system, that building that was a tool, or you being used as a tool of oppression, he saw it fall, he fell with it, and we the reader saw it fall. There's probability if the story continued they might have rebuilt somewhere else, but that was the end of our story. So Babel, or the necessity of violence, that's the book, the full title. I just shortened it as Babel. The full title is Babel, or the necessity of violence. As it is a book, is a story about language as a tool of exploitation, about identity, about existing in a world of the oppressor, being oppressed in the world of the oppressor, having to choose between gratitude and alienation, having to choose between gratitude towards the oppressor, and freedom from the oppressor, having to choose between gratitude towards the oppressor and your identity. The choice the oppressed has to make: do I choose myself or the oppressor? Do I remain gratitude to my do I remain grateful to the oppressed, or I take back my identity, or I take back who I am, the person that I am, that the oppressed took? It's a beautiful book, it's an intellectual book. It is everything. I feel like I could go on and on. I don't want to just overuse too much adjectives, but in overall, in summary, I love the way that our author made this book, that they didn't romanticize revolution. At the core of it, we see revolution taking place little by little by little by little. We see the lives of our characters, how they went through, how they it's like from a baby, a child growing up, a child from a cradle began to crawl, began to walk, begin to became a full grown adult and know what wrong and right is, what good and bad is. And I loved how our author didn't romanticize it. There was nothing beautiful about, in fact, if anything, is beautiful violence, but there was nothing romantic about it. There was nothing. Revolution was how revolution would look like, because revolution is war, revolution is loss of lives, revolution is loss of friends, revolution is loss of property, revolution is anything but peaceful, revolution is anything but romantic. And I loved how the author showed us all of this. I loved how our author portrayed it. It's tragic, it's messy, it's painful, it's suffering, it's denying yourself, and at the end sometimes is giving your life to revolution. Well, when we are young, and even till now, when we are doing history of our nations by nations, you see, we hear stories of heroes of the nation, how they fought war, how they fought hard, how they fought the colonial masters, how they fought for our rights, how a lot of things that we enjoy now are a result of people who refused to be under the thumb or under the foot of the oppressor, to who refused to follow the oppressors, who were hell bent on our freedom. And so there are people like that, and we see stories of those that lived on after, and there are also stories of those that died with it, those that gave their life, who lost, not just even lost, but they willingly gave their life for that. They willingly gave their life for that revolution. And I think that is what really ended or summarized or gave us, that is the I loved the end that she gave Robin. Though it would have been so nice, or should I say it would have been an happy ending if Robin lived, but then it wouldn't be revolution. And I loved that he gave himself for that revolution. It wasn't as if he was killed by mistake or he was killed by running. No, he died, he gave his life, that no, I would die for this revolution. I will give everything I have for this revolution. And another thing I loved about it also is that most times I love books that show reality of the negatives. That as much as, yes, so in a way we loved that Robin took up this mantle. Robin, although there were people who had started it before him, who had died at the point, and it was like passing the baton, and the baton, he was the last person to hold the baton. I love that they didn't make it seem like, oh, it was a jolly ride, because it really wasn't. He had identity crisis, he lost all those that mattered, he lost himself, he even killed his father. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that. He killed his father while at it, and I will see how the author didn't make it look like, no, it was one smooth jolly ride. It was a painful one, it was tragic, it was messy, it's filled with a lot of agony, suffering, tears, but at the same time there was fulfillment in spite of it. I think that is one big thing that I loved about it. That as much as it was, as beautifully tragic revolution can seem like, it really is not. The process to it, or the road to it, is not a beautiful one. It's not a jolly ride, and the author made us see that she didn't romanticize it. No, she showed it as it is, or as it would have been if it were real, and as it was, for those that it had happened to, for those that had gone through this type of situation. And it just goes to show what change for change to happen, it requires a lot. It requires a lot, and we saw what needed to be done for change to happen. And I don't know for other readers, but for someone like me, I felt the weight of it. And I feel like the author wanted us, Rebecca wanted us to feel that with me. I felt it. For a day or two, I couldn't pick up a book, not because I was sad, but it brought about reality of life to me, that sometimes revolution is a weighty thing. And I cannot help but feel for those people who feel that burden, who have that burden to make a change. Although when you look at it instantly, or when you look at it in insight, it's a burden that should be on everybody who believes or sees things that are not right. If you see something that something is not right, or is not as it should be a burden for you, that no, this is not what should be. There has to be a change to this thing. But there are some people who carry that burden more than the average person, or than the normal person. So I couldn't but help but feel in a way, because there are people in our day-to-day lives, for Nigerian example, that that they are known for that. I could name names sef, but so for some reason I can't remember some. But some people come to mind when I think about this, that they've given their lives, they've dedicated their lives, that no, in my lifetime a change has to happen. And so I cannot help but feel for people like that, because we feel things in different forms, and not all of us are patriotic. Not everybody is patriotic, because when you do think about the things that come with being patriotic, the things that come with being a revolutionary, ah, it comes with a lot of negatives. There's almost no positivity to it. Even when people remember you, it's most likely after your death. Are you able to see people that remember you when you're in the grave? Most likely not. So it comes with a lot of loss. It comes with a lot of things. You have to lose a lot of things. You will seem mad to a lot of people. And I don't know one, I don't know most of them. And for anyone that I know, it's probably from afar, people that I see or know from afar. And I couldn't help but just feel that burden in a way, and feel for people that are burdened, that cannot help but feel burdened by that kind of weight. And you guys, it's not sad though, but it's more like a call to calling us to reality of what reality. I loved it. I think I gave it a 8.5/10 for my rating. It was a great book, and RF Kwangi, she's in my list of authors. I made it my a mission to read every book that she has written and will ever write, because she has my heart. I love how intelligent she writes, how she writes beautifully, intellectually wise. It's just everything. she ticks all the boxes. If you know how many new words I learnt while reading this book, oh my goodness, I just couldn't keep tabs or keep writing them down. Every time I'm with this book, my data, I'm always on Google or ChatGPT. What does this mean in this context? How could you use this word, this Latin word? I love the way she gave us etymology of all these words. Every like they were, it was like reading a dictionary. And I think it really shows that she's a scholar, and not just a scholar, but that she's an historian as well. And apparently it seems like she's also a translator, and that was really evident in her writing. I feel like if I don't stop now, I'll just go. I'll just go on and on. You guys know how I am with books, and I really hope I was able to do justice to this book. And I know I recommend it. I'm recommending it. You will love it. You will really love it. You guys. So yes, that's the end of today's episode. You guys, I'm reading another one. This one is a classic. Classics, yes, rather. And I feel like you guys might like it because me, I love it. Should I tell you? No, I'm not mentioning it, but I'm thinking I'm going to read and we are going to talk about it next. But it gives a little bit of complication, and I hate not being able to really do justice to these books that I read. But that's what we're going to be doing. That's what we're going to be treating next. But I'm not going to tell you guys. It's a surprise, just like this was a surprise. So, anyways, you guys will be joining cutting for today, and I know today's one is quite long. You guys should bear with me. I just needed to tell you. In fact, I still feel like I didn't cover like I just covered like maybe just the summary. There were still some intricate things I feel like I could have covered, like Robin killing his father. But anyways, that is it for today. Thank you guys, and we'll be drawing the curtains. Bye. Oh, I'll see. I'll see you guys when I see or you hear from me. Bye.